Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever found yourself in a debate? I mean, you've got all the facts, all the evidence lined up perfectly, and the other person just doubles down? Or, if we're being totally honest with ourselves, maybe you've done it too. Today, we are diving into the fascinating and, yes, sometimes really frustrating psychology of why it is so incredibly hard to change our own minds, let alone anyone else's. I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? This isn't about people being smart or not. It's about something deeper. It's about the hidden wiring in our own minds. So, how does your brain build a version of reality that can be so stubborn when facts come knocking? Let's figure this out together. So here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at how beliefs get built in the first place. Then, we'll see what happens when those beliefs get challenged. After that, we'll get into the incredible power of our social groups and how just hearing something over and over can make it feel true. And finally, don't worry, we'll talk about how we can actually become clearer, better thinkers. All right, our journey starts inside the most complex thing we know of in the entire universe, your brain. Right in there, in all those neural pathways, the very foundations of how we see the world are being built, a lot of the time before we're even really aware it's happening. You see, according to research, beliefs aren't just these little thoughts we have. They're way more fundamental. Before you can even form the words, "I believe this," your brain is already busy weaving together your memories, your emotions, and all your past experiences into this kind of blueprint, a guide that tells you how to act. It's your personal command system for getting through life. So these beliefs become a core piece of who we are. But then what happens when some new information shows up that totally contradicts one of them? Well, our brain doesn't just go, "Oh, hey, new data, let me just update my files." No way. Instead, it fires up this powerful mental self-defense system. And we're not talking about a little intellectual puzzle here. This feeling, cognitive dissonance, it actually feels like a threat. It creates this deep internal static, a psychological mess that our brains are desperate to clean up. And they will do some pretty extraordinary things to make that uncomfortable feeling just stop. This classic experiment shows this perfectly. So you have people do a mind-numbingly boring task. One group gets paid $20 to lie to the next person and say it was fun. They could easily justify the lie, right? The money made me do it. But the other group, they only got paid $1, and a single dollar just isn't enough to justify lying. So their brains had this huge conflict. And to solve it, they did something incredible. They changed their own belief. They convinced themselves that they actually enjoyed the task. Think about that. We will literally change our own reality to avoid feeling like a hypocrite. But wait, it gets even crazier. Turns out our beliefs aren't just about protecting our own self-image. They are deeply, deeply tied to our need to belong. You could even say our beliefs are a form of social currency. Back in the 70s, a psychologist named Henri Tajfel showed that it takes basically nothing for us to form groups and immediately start favoring our own people. As soon as our identity gets linked to a group, doesn't matter if it's a political party, a favorite sports team, whatever, we automatically start thinking in terms of us and them. And this experiment just shows how ridiculously easy it is to flip that switch. People were randomly put into groups like overestimators or underestimators based on a totally meaningless task. And almost instantly, they started showing favoritism to their own new, completely arbitrary group, giving them more money than the outsiders. Our tribal loyalty is like a hair trigger. And here's the key takeaway from all this. When you hear someone state a really passionate belief about a hot-button topic, like climate change or gun control, they might not really be making a statement about facts. A lot of the time, they're planting a flag. They're signaling their identity. They're showing loyalty to their tribe. This study is absolutely stunning. Okay, so when people were asked to interpret some data about a neutral topic, like a skin cream, their math skills pretty much predicted how accurate they'd be. Makes sense. But, and here's the kicker, when the exact same numbers were framed as a study on gun control, their political identity just took over. If the results challenged their group's position, their math skills just went out the window. Their ability to reason was literally hijacked by tribal loyalty. So on top of all our tribal instincts, our brains have yet another quirk that makes us really vulnerable to bad information. We're suckers for things that feel familiar. This is a really powerful and kind of sneaky mental shortcut. When we hear something again and again, our brain processes it more easily. And the problem is, our brain mistakes that feeling of ease for a signal of truth. If it's easy to think about, we figure it must be right. This is such a great example of how deep this effect goes. Researchers found that just exposing people to a little piece of a phrase, the body temperature of a chicken, was enough. Later on, when they saw a full and totally false statement using that familiar phrase, it felt more true to them, just because a part of it rang a bell. Even partial familiarity is enough to make a lie feel plausible. And this, of course, shows the really dark side of this effect. Propagandists have always understood this, intuitively. They know if you repeat a lie enough times, it starts to wear a path in our brains. It begins to sound like the truth. It's a deliberate tactic to exploit a basic feature of how our minds work. Okay, so our brains are just these minefields of biases that make us cling to our beliefs. Is it totally hopeless? No, absolutely not. The very first step is just being aware of it. By understanding these mental traps, we can start to learn how to step around them and get a little bit closer to what's actually true. So, researchers talk about two basic ways of thinking. First, you have the lawyer mindset. The lawyer starts with a conclusion and then hunts for evidence to defend it and swats away anything that contradicts it. The whole point is to win. But then there's the scout mindset. A scout is driven by curiosity. The goal isn't to defend a position. It's to see the world as clearly as possible, to draw the most accurate map. So how do we actually become more like a scout? Well, it starts with a little intellectual humility, just admitting we could be wrong. It means actively looking for the smartest people who disagree with us and genuinely trying to get their point of view. It's about untangling your ego from your ideas. Remember, if your idea is wrong, it doesn't mean you are wrong. The goal isn't about being right all the time. It's about getting a little closer to the truth day by day. And that's really the choice we all have. Every single time we run into new information. Are we going to defend the fortress of what we already think? Or are we going to explore the map with curiosity? The answer to that question really shapes our own understanding, and maybe even the world we all share. Thanks for joining me, and as always, keep asking questions.